Hi there, and welcome to Hanapin Marketing and PPC Heroes webinar today. Today you've got myself, Carrie, Albright, and our very own Secret Jake talking about Google shopping campaigns and 8 tips to optimize your performance. Like I said, my name is Carrie Albright. I'm an account manager here at Hanapin Marketing. I also blog for PPC Hero. You've probably heard me on a lot of webinars or in written form, given some stats to the PPC world, and you can always find me on Twitter at Albright_C. I'm always open to hearing your thoughts, questions, concerns, and ideas anytime, so feel free to reach out. And then Secret Jake is here next to me, and I'm pretty excited. This is the first time we've been on a webinar together.
This is the first time we've been on a webinar together, and I am also an account manager in marketing. I'm also a blogger on PPC Hero, and I've also been on other webinars. But if you've heard me on other webinars, it's probably related to something on automation. I've done quite a bit of work on that, and I also have a Twitter handle, Real Secret Jake, and another account manager here actually pressured me for these on a webinar, so that is how I ended up on Twitter. And that's what you need to know about me. If you want to go ahead and join the conversation on Twitter, go ahead and use the hashtag ThinkPPC in your tweets, or use the webinar question box to send us questions. Once we wrap up the presentation, we're going to go back and try and answer as many questions as we can. Okay, so to kick it off, we're going to start with a live poll question. How long have you been in PPC? A, less than a year. B, 1 to 3 years. C, 3 to 5 years, or D, 5+ years?
So I typically like to guess how long people have been in PPC based on the subject of the webinar. Like one that's like advanced display techniques and things like that. I expect that they might have been a little more seasoned in their PPC experience. What do you think for this one, talking about shopping campaigns?
Oh boy, I'm consulting my magic 8-ball right here. It's showing up as B.
B, okay. I think that sounds pretty good. I mean, I think there are probably a lot of people out there who, as soon as PLAs took off a couple years ago, they were like, okay, I've got to get in on it. And so maybe they're not super experienced, but they've definitely gotten involved and realized what a huge market there is there.
Oh, and we were wrong. At least I was wrong. So we're coming out at the highest total, 37% from 3 to 5 years, with 20% at 1 to 3. 23% at less than 1 year, and over 1/5 at 5+ years. I just threw a bunch of numbers at you, but we got a pretty good distribution, but I'm surprised to see a lot in the 3 to 5. Usually in this industry, I see lots of people coming in starting their careers, so I see lots of the 1 to 3, but we got a lot of experienced people here today, which is great.
Well, I'll go ahead and ask another poll question then, and we can consult your magic 8-ball for the last time. But this is really going to tip it into like successful predicting tools, or
we might have to go old school and go back to the turtle shell and compare it like that. But
all right, so the question is, how do you manage your accounts? So your options are A, I manage it myself. B, I'm part of a team that manages it. C, I outsource my account management. And D, I'm rethinking how my account is managed. So typically around here, we talk to a lot of people who've either had a different agency at managing their accounts, or they've done it for a while and they realize that it's getting a little too big for their britches, so they kind of need to get someone else involved and really help bring some of that expertise.
I was really worried you were going to ask me to answer this question. Just what if I answer D? I'm really rethinking this whole account management thing.
You're out the door, right in the webinar now, and that's it. All right, well, it sounds like most of the people listening manage it themselves, but there are also a fair few of you that are part of the team that manages your PPC. So that's great to know. I definitely find that sort of a team collaboration approach is really helpful, especially staying on top of new things and thinking of new ways to improve performance. So today we're going to be talking about shopping campaigns. Now, we've talked a lot, and I mean a lot, about the transition from just traditional PLA campaigns to shopping campaigns. If you're not yet upgraded, there's an upgrade tool. There's a lot of literature out there covering how to make that process as smooth as possible. So we could probably talk for a while about that, but I suspect if you're on this webinar, you're looking for optimization tips. So that's what we're going to talk about. We know there are a lot of different people out there in the e-com world, and some of you have maybe just a handful of products that you sell. Some of you might have a humongous inventory with, you know, up to 100,000 products that you're trying to sell and trying to do your best as far as that return goes. So today we're going to talk about both those sizes of accounts, and then also a couple of tips from your PPC heroes. That's me and Jake.
So how we're addressing it, well, we're going to talk about both larger and smaller accounts, and there's a lot of overlap in between them, but we're also trying to add another dimension there. So looking at expansion versus kind of different tenses there. I'm regretting
it's
it
the
right
concept
now.
of conserving. Conserving is a
Conserving.
noun. Conservation?
Well, expansion versus, yeah, okay. I'm going to show myself out the door now. Just enjoy Carrie for the rest of the time.
Take your magic 8-ball with you. Just go.
So despite the easy migration, the new system is going to change how you actually working your account. So we've seen new metrics added, new things in the dimensions tab, things that weren't previously available with product listing ads that are going to change the way that you work with it and the way the system works. That makes it kind of similar to the enhanced campaigns, where it's one of those, we're changing the way it works. You're going to have to migrate it to it. Deal with it. So you have to kind of change your optimization strategies to make sure that you can still hit your goals even when Google's changing things on their back end and the way the system works. So these new tactics are going to start popping up, and just new ways. We'll go through segmenting your products, targeting different users, and it's just going to require you to adjust as needed.
And kind of like enhanced campaigns, they're assuring us this is for our own good and our best interest to go through this process whether we want to or not. So we're going to help you guys get a better idea of what to do now that you've been gently nudged into this new way of product listing ads.
And I was going to say, I'm very, I possibly came off very cynically there, but I've actually had a lot of success with Google shopping campaigns. It's been a bit of a learning process since they're new, and Google is still releasing updates to them. But yeah, if you haven't switched over yet, we'll just say, before you're forced, go ahead and do it, because I have had great success with it compared to the traditional product listing ads. Okay, so for tip number 1, we're going to look at the expansion for small volume. So if you have a small volume of products, it definitely takes down on some of the workload that you have. You don't have as large a feed to manage. You don't have as much to segment out. So for this, I would definitely recommend going straight into segmenting your products down, preferably by ad group. It was 1-2 months ago where Google finally said, hey, we're going to give you ad groups in shopping campaigns, because before, I don't know if you had to do this, Carrie, when you wanted to create a specific segment, you would have to create different campaigns. Of course, they have the tiered product groups, but it's just like they completely ignored the fact that you might want to have different negative keywords based on your different ad groups. So those are in there, and what I would preferably do in mind, just to help out, I'm thinking for possibly very small volume, so maybe less than 20, maybe you're selling supplements or health products, or just a range of a certain exact product. I don't know, maybe Thunder shirts or something like that, where it's kind of standardized across just a few different sizes. I would break those out into separate ad groups, and the one thing you're going to find when you start breaking out these ad groups is even if you were performing well just having one base ad group bidding on all products, especially using these competitive metrics, you're going to start to see the differences between the way your products are performing, so you won't have any stragglers hidden in there, and also you won't have your bids set too low and actually holding back your best products. I mentioned you have the tighter bid control. You can set individual bids for each product or each tightly contained product group, and those specific metrics are going to help you spot those issues early, whether it's with your bids, whether it's something in your feed, you need to upgrade your titles because they just aren't very good, something's wrong with the image. It's just going to make your life a lot easier if you just start from the very basics.
So on the flip side of it, saying you want to make sure that you're working at your best efficiency, expansion is awesome, but also you want to be able to conserve what budget you've got and really put it into the best buckets possible. So for this, we're going to take a look at how you would do sort of an SQR for your shopping campaigns. In this demo here, you can see that you've got your dimensions tab, which you would break down into your search terms. And what that's going to do is it's going to help you see what exactly people are looking for that prompts your ads and your products to be shown. So in this one here, I've got my defining volume, and by that I mean I'm sorting it by click-through rate because I want to know what is getting the most engagement. Maybe I've got a really competitive price or something like that. So I want to do it by click-through rate, but I want to do it by a volume that's going to make a lot of sense. So I did, for this particular example, I did a minimum of 50 impressions, and then those which got the most clicks. And so then what I can do is start looking through those and saying, okay, these products are the ones that folks are searching for, they're clicking for, and is it turning out to be a good investment on my end? Is the return there, or is it something that I actually am going to need to take a closer look at and maybe pushed to the back a bit more. So when talking about that, we talk about negatives. So the funny thing about shopping campaigns is that there's no keyword targeting. Now, those of you who've already set it up, I know you know that. And those of you who are new and very excited and bright-eyed about shopping campaigns, stop looking for where to put your keywords. You can't put keywords in. It's just the bummer that comes with the territory. So your option here when you're trying to figure out what to do as far as your keyword optimization is really working with a negative keyword list. So like I mentioned, looking through your search terms, looking through what kinds of things people are going to be engaging with that just isn't profitable for you, and then plugging that in at your ad group level or at your campaign level. And then as you're putting these things in, it is definitely possible to, especially if it's a product that has a seasonal fluctuation to it, to plug something in and see results that might look good for a minute, but then over time you start to see sort of a slip in performance, a slip in volume overall. And so being able to really document the changes you're making and keeping track of what negatives you're putting into place can really help you troubleshoot if later on you notice that things maybe aren't as simple as you thought, and it's giving you a little bit different performance in the long run. And then the last one is improved product descriptions. So in a situation where you have a small volume of products that you're selling, let's say Jake said, 20 products or so, let's say it's thunder shirts. I really like the idea of thunder shirts. We both have fairly anxious dogs, and so we know the value of a good cuddle when there's a storm coming through and your dog's getting nervous. So let's say you've got 20 different thunder shirt products. There's a couple different colors, a couple different sizes, and that's it. But it's a pretty manageable list of things that you're selling. So one option there is to actually test what you use as your product description. And from that, Google can actually decide how they're matching up your product listing ad with the query that's being typed in. So that's something that's going to be an area for you to optimize your performance. And I have here using SEO best practices, so really making sure that you've got some relevant content and appropriate information in your description, and consider, but ultimately resist, keyword stuffing. You don't actually want to put, a description that's going to be just a lot of jumbled keywords in there, or top terms in there. But you want to really make sure that you're thinking about it when you put that together. And then being able to test your descriptions for improved targeting, that's something that you can do over time. That's something you can do in a segmented way, depending on how you break out your different products. But that's something that you can do on a really fine level. That if you have an inventory of 80,000 things, it's going to be a lot more difficult to do that. So it's kind of the benefit of having a small volume.
And the one thing I just want to add along with Gary, I think you covered it really well with the descriptions. You can do the same thing with the product titles as well. One of the things that Google has the limits on how long they can be, but I've seen times where the product listings show up, but they don't even show the full title. So if you start finding certain terms that convert really well, maybe that's kind of the primary selling point of that product, and you might consider moving those keywords towards the front of the product title. Just it shows more often, no matter what kind of form that Google decides to put those product listings in.
It's like ad testing for PLAs. Kind of special stuff right there, you guys. So if you're a big advocate for testing things, especially ad testing, which I'm a big fan of, this is your chance to really slide in there and say, you know what, you're trying to shortchange me on my descriptions line 1 and 2. No. I'll throw in some new titles and see what we can get from it.
Okay, so for tip number 3, we're going to jump into the large volume, and this doesn't necessarily have to be huge. I know we talked about the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands of products. I mean, this could just come down to the thousands, or it could even maybe be when you have a few hundred products, but you just don't have the time right off the bat to segment everything out. So what I've had a lot of success with is, especially if if you're in a position like us as a client manager where they want to push the full inventory right away, start by creating these high-level product groups. And one of the nice things about the shopping campaigns is you can segment based on these top-level categories that are in your feed. And Carrie and I were talking about this a little bit. Part of this may require some work on your end depending on the state of your feed, because there's going to be some of these that are required by Google. So some of the things like gender or shoes. But under shoes, you can have even more. So you could have work boots, dress shoes, sandals, all things that are different products. But if you don't have those in the feed, if you haven't taken the time to put them in there, they aren't going to be available to you through this drop-down menu. So that'll save you a lot of headache doing that, because then all you have to do is you can segment on a brand, segment off of sandals, have another one where it segments on boots or tennis shoes. So you can separate all your products like that without having to put in too much work. And then behind that, I would say go ahead and build a catch-all campaign. And this would be a campaign that targets all products, but it just has a very low bid. And the purpose of this is just in case those queries start slipping through the cracks and missing those higher priority campaigns you have, that you want to make sure you're at least getting that, as well as this could serve as your lower priority campaign to catch the products that you are actively advertising. It doesn't have its own campaign built out just yet. And then go ahead and use your search data for initial negative keywords. Carrie did a great job of saying, why you need the negative keywords, because, Google's going off your feed, but they treat it very much like broad match, and you might see things that you wouldn't expect. Maybe you only advertise basketball shoes, but you start noticing you're having lots of queries for something like cleats or running shoes, something that you don't sell, and it's just not going to convert because it's a totally different market. So go ahead and think of, I say use your brain and think of things that you don't want in there, as well as using the kind of negatives that you're already using in your search campaigns, because those are some of the same things that are going to pop up on the shopping side.
So when it comes to how you can reduce inefficient spend, this is the same slide that you saw before, because it is another way that you can go back through and say, you know what, on a big picture level, I can still identify those clear things that I want to remove. So this is that, that same approach of pulling your search terms and really finding the ones that are sticking out as clear anomalies as far as the success related to the click. As a side note, really sexy sandal crocs came in as one of the highest click-through rates. I was glancing at that, and who knew? I mean, people want them. They're going to go shopping for them, and
I was wondering if that was just an odd spelling or if that's an actual brand name. I've never heard Crocs described as sexy, but maybe it's a new thing.
Either way, I'm buying them.
They're expanding their market.
So another way that you can break down more of the large volume accounts is to actually go into the dimensions tab again, but this time pull through the shoppings tab a product type bit of a report. So Jake was talking about using your data feed to actually include the specific product type. And here in this situation, we've got that there. This comes from a feed where there are really only a few different types of variation for the product type. So there's accessories and athletics and things like that. But then what Google does is they use their special Google magic and decide what it falls into based on the description and the title of your product. So what we start to see are the different kinds of categories and how they perform. Now, what you can do with this is the same thing that we've been talking about, which is really segmenting it out and saying, where am I wasting my spend? Where am I finding lower relevance from the search term to the product that's showing? And how is that affecting my overall performance? Where am I wasting budget when I could be using it for something that's a little more relevant? So when you look at this, it should give you some insights as to either what you can do to better segment your campaigns or what you can do to pull back on something that's not performing as well. The other side of it, the other new SQR, is through analytics. So like I said, I've got an account where we don't necessarily have all the product types built out beautifully in the data feed. There's a whole heap of them, and it's just something that, that isn't as thorough as some other accounts might be. But what I can do is actually go into analytics and see it from the sort of a flip side of it. So here I've gone through and I've pulled a product performance report from my conversion ecom tab. And then I've actually sorted it by campaign and specifically the name of the product. And what that does is it actually lets you start associating your product with what the performance looks like and with what those analytics metrics are. So while I could see in the interface, we were kind of poking around and enjoying the fact that you can't necessarily pull the product name from one of those reports that you find in AdWords. Here, this actually gives you that information. And when I've got a data feed that has these specific products in it, I can actually begin to compare what kind of performance we're seeing with what kind of things we have available. So for me, going into analytics is a huge, huge help. And if you don't have a lot that comes in through your data feed that helps you segment so beautifully in AdWords like Jake has, this is one way that I kind of like to sort of back my way into some good analysis too.
So going into expansion 2, this is more of a continuation off of the previous 2 slides.
Oh.
It looks like some of our filler text is left in there. So what you're going to have to do is further refine your initial expansion. And right here on the right side, what you're looking at is where I have the boots broken down by the work and safety boots, and then actually went for specific products. This is where I went through the feed and I selected the item IDs, and I uploaded those into the shopping campaign so I could bid on those exactly. I wanted a campaign just for that style of boot. And then I did that across a range of them just to see how the different variations performed. Along with that, you're going to want to head and create a generic or category. So, I think I started in the wrong spot there by talking about the very specific products. But one of the things you might want to do, similar to search, is, of course, I'm bidding on all the specific models, but there's a lot more volume for something generic. So, something for Nike Air Shocks, Nike Air Force Ones, different versions of Nike shoes. Those are all great keywords to bid on, but you're also going to see a lot of traffic, and if you have a good conversion rate, you're going to get a lot of conversions just bidding on Nike shoes or Nike footwear, something that's a little more generic. So despite having these campaigns, now that you are focusing primarily on specific models, you want to have those backup campaigns similar to your generic campaigns to catch those also catch the ones that are just a brand in footwear or running shoes, basketball shoes. You just create another level, and then making sure I had that correctly. It's easier. I should have put a slide in here to kind of show it. But what you want to do is have at your top level, you want to have your models, and those are going to have your highest bids and your most specific negatives. So blocking out some of those generic terms and only collecting the model specific ones. Below that, you're going to have the kind of the more generic ones, so related to the product, but not a specific product number, and then keep on going down the list back down to those generic like catch-all campaigns that we talked about earlier. And then Carrie touched on this already, but based on this, especially when you have those specific items broken out, you can go back and edit your feed as needed. One thing that we found out is for a best-selling product line, it was doing very well, but there was a specific model that was doing poorly. It was getting just a ton of traffic, but no conversions. And I was talking with the client, and we found out, oh, it could actually be a title issue. And we went ahead and, like I mentioned to Carrie, moved those key terms up to the front of the title, and we actually dropped that some of that traffic by quite a bit. We weren't getting as many clicks, but we were still getting a decent number of clicks, I should say, but our conversion rate shot up. So rather than having a bunch of unqualified clicks at like a 1.5% CTR, we were looking over the last 3 weeks or so since it started, looking at a 7% click-through rate, lower volume, and we started seeing more and more conversions come through. So as you break down these specific products, you just want to narrow down and say, what can I change in my feed to make this better? And really push the same thing as if you have something that's really underperforming, as we did with that boot, say, why is this so low? What can we do to make this more relevant?
Excellent. So the tip that I've got here is one that I think it's a little involved, but I think there's definitely some big picture takeaways from it that are really, really helpful. So when AdWords search terms and their lists associated with that just aren't enough for you, what can you do? So the scenario here that has to do with product inventory is, let's say you've got a bunch of PLAs that are running, and you've got a really strong click-through rate. Fantastic. But then your conversion rate, based on those clicks, is not so good. So what you're seeing is the price point is competitive, but the shopping experience is lacking. They see the shoe, or they see the thunder shirt, or they see the lawnmower, whatever it is, they click through, but they end up not buying it. And so there's something that's not working for them. So the solution here could be to identify those products that don't have great variety. So in talking about that, what we would say is to examine your inventory for the most frequently viewed variations. So here are a couple examples just to kind of make clear what I'm pointing out. Let's say you sell men's tracksuits, and you've got a bunch of tracksuits that are available, but you really do have average sizes that people typically buy. Sure, you have, smalls and triple XLs and mediums and things like that, but mostly you really do sell a lot of, let's say, men's large and extra large. Or another one might be common product colors or styles, such as kitchen mixers. KitchenAid mixers, people love that seafoam green, and they also love, the pink for breast cancer awareness. Those are really, really popular. And so you know that if nothing else, those are the ones that typically sell. They have the highest conversion rate across your products. So then what you would do is identify the product styles that fail to offer the products within the average range that you're constantly experiencing with your sales. So the way that I broke this down is I actually pulled a report from our data feed basing the quantity on those products that fall within the average size range. So these are, again, footwear. We just like talking about footwear. I don't know. We're both runners, right? You run?
Yep.
I mean, you know, people love shoes. People love wheelies. You can see that we have quite a few wheelies on this list. But so we're talking about shoes here. And what I can see is that from my current data feed, I have almost 230 wheelie shoes. So that's great. If somebody clicks through, they have a huge variety of shoes to look through. And if nothing else, through the sizes that I've got listed here, these are just average foot sizes. What I know is that if they come to the site and they're looking for some shoes to buy, it is likely that they will find at least a few options that work for them. Now at the bottom there, we've got these Nirvana shoes that we only have 50 total. So across the sizes, the colors, things like that, the average size just have 50 or so, which means that the likelihood they're going to come to the site and not find what they're looking for, or maybe not find their size, is actually a lot greater. And so that means a higher click-through rate, and that lower inventory means that you may actually end up wasting some of that money when they don't find what they're looking for. So the options there are to really push for the things that you have a large inventory for and the high click-through rate for, and then for the ones that have the high click-through rate but low performance, maybe reduce those bids for a while, or even pause off depending on what your stock looks like until the new inventory arrives. And that's just really a way to reduce some of that excess spend that may be slipping by you. Ooh, so now we've got another poll question for you. You've been listening so patiently. This is your reward.
Yep. Okay. So after the suspense has been built, what area of Google Shopping campaigns is your biggest pain point? Of course, we included the hashtag ThinkPBC if you'd like to use that. Otherwise, use any other channel you'd like to communicate on and let us know your thoughts. But I'll go ahead and give you the options now. A, appropriate coverage and segmentation. B, understanding efficient spend opportunities. C, analyzing my shopping data. D, all of these. Or E, none of these. I've been reading PPC Hero every day, and I know my stuff.
I'm hoping we get a lot of E's.
Hopefully.
I think it'll be great. We'll start recruiting all of you guys to give us your feedback on what you're thinking. But I would say that a lot of times what I've experienced is people just not understand the segmentation side of things. I think that that at this point in the game, most people, I'm guessing, have figured out at least the basics to their data feed and those technical things, but that really understanding what they can get out of breaking things down seems to be an area that folks are kind of still learning about. Ooh, so we've got the results here, and they're actually, it's nice. I actually like what we're seeing.
Looks like everyone feels pretty good about actually analyzing their shopping data. I think one of the nice things that Google has done is they've made these shopping campaigns more like the search campaigns through the dimensions tabs, things that we can view through there, and associating those numbers now with individual products and categories rather than just tying us to the ad group level. So it looks like the rest of it's actually a good split. We have appropriate coverage and segmentation, understanding efficient spend opportunities. Over a third of people said all of these, and 6%, which is pretty good, said none of these. I've been reading PPC Hero every day.
Aw, good job, guys.
And thank you for reading.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, the fact that a lot of you said all of these, hopefully this conversation has addressed some of those points, and that we've been able to at least get your feet wet in understanding how you can break down performance, understand what you should be doing with your budgets, and also how you can better optimize the way that you've got your campaigns all segmented.
And I was going to say, just a reassurance that there's nothing wrong with worrying about this, because even on our end, I know not everyone is in a position like you are, Carrie, where we work in AdWords 40, oftentimes more than 40 hours a week, where we can focus solely on this. That's just a general trend. Like shopping came out, and it's very similar to when enhanced campaigns came out. There's just not a whole lot of material out there to help people kind of move to the next step. So it's everyone's kind of trying to figure out as we go along. And hopefully we can kind of present the early findings here.
Yeah, it's a lot like enhanced campaigns actually, where there was a lot going on in the transition, but then so many people are focused on the transitional process that there weren't a whole lot of people at the forefront saying, okay, here's what you do next. Once you're set, here's what you should be doing to better lay out your campaign. So Great. Glad to know you guys are reading and interested in improving your performance. So we've got 2 more tips for you, and these are both us just going off the rails. We just decided we're going to ditch the theme of expanding or conserving our spend. We're just going to say, you know what I really want to tell you guys about? So this is a beta. So you know how betas are. Sometimes they close them without notice, all sorts of things like that. But I included the URL here for you to sign up if you're interested or if you've got more questions about it. But product reviews are one of my favorite things. This is something that you're able to access through your PLAs. You have to obviously get opted into it. But what it does is it actually shows third-party ratings on the products that are in your feed, which means you can actually have the number of stars associated with either a third-party review aggregator, or if you actually are collecting them through your own sources and then submitting it to Google, you can actually show them here. So this is it's a new thing, and it obviously has a pretty big impact on the experience people have on their search results page. So here I can see, so I Googled women's Oxford shoes. I love Oxford shoes. I think they're so cool, and I'm really stoked that they're back. But I'm looking at these, and I'm seeing, okay, I've got these 3 items that have these ratings on them. These all have, well, most of them have higher prices, so they're pretty expensive. And I can see, you know, I've got a couple that are like $60 or $30 or so. But these fantastic ratings really intrigue me, and I think, okay, yeah, these other ones have cool styles and they're cheaper, but these must be really good shoes if people are really into them. So it actually compels me to click on it because I really do want to find the best option, even maybe if it's not as cheap. And so for those of you out there who are selling things and you say, okay, PLAs are not great for me because when my product pops up, there's always somebody who's a little bit cheaper, and so it's really hard to feel like I can get some ground here. Well, this is a great opportunity for you because if you can actually get people to connect with your ad in more ways than just the price point, it's certain to improve what your conversion rate looks like. So I know when I see this, I would click on it. And I said just Jake click because deep down I kind of want to know. Is this your stylish shoe?
These exact shoes, female Oxford shoes?
I think so.
I'll neither confirm nor deny. It's
they make you feel so dainty. They're so pointy in the toes, a little saddle shoe style.
I'll say I might just spend the rest of the afternoon looking into this, and I can get back to you. Maybe we'll post something on the blog about it, or my Twitter, if anyone decides to follow it and really wants to know.
And you guys feel free to vote. I mean, we've got our Twitter handles. Feel free to vote on which shoe you think Jake should be choosing. He's kind of a warm summer tone, so I'm thinking something the browns, but really, you know, feel free to let us know.
And then the one thing I wanted to include is along with these ratings, that if you can get those, I'm sure it's going to be a nice little boost to your click-through rate. I know we've seen the same thing for clients and accounts who have been able to get things like the reseller ratings added to their search ads, that you can see a big click-through rate increase. Because I think we kind of forget sometimes, because we work in this sphere all the time, that there still are those people out there that are like, the internet, you can buy stuff, and they just aren't that trustworthy. So, and I think, you know, there's so many news about scams and stuff online. If you don't have that widely known name brand, these ratings are definitely beneficial. And even if you are a name brand, it shows, you know, this is why we are the best. We're selling these shoes with the ratings on them, and you can know you're buying something good or clicking on something good. It's not going to waste your time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a big fan of these.
Now, optimizing performance, tip number 8. We've talked a lot about optimizing, but this is almost the word of warning, the wagging of the finger at Google for some things. But the product groups are really finicky, so watch out. This comes from a few things. There was another coworker here. She said, I want to start targeting specific items. These are our best-selling products. I want to make sure they're in there. But due to the way that the product group was structured, every time she tried to add those products, it ended up overriding things that were in there, creating exclusions, just making it really weird to work with. Secondly, following off of that, be careful of the select all in the interface, especially if you have everything highly segmented. Especially on those product IDs, everything has its own bid, so you can either click on each item and change the bid individually, or you can go ahead and do the bulk edit. I know, I cannot remember his name, but he put a good blog post together about this. When you do the select all, if you aren't paying attention, it also by default selects all your excluded. So if you try and do the mass edit, it's actually going to take your new bid and apply it to what used to be excluded. And especially if you have a large product inventory or high bids, it can get pretty crazy if you accidentally have something set to all products again.
And I think that's a really important one, especially if you're working as part of a team and maybe you've got somebody who's just giving you a hand for the day. I can't emphasize enough the importance of double checking your excluded selections, because it either is going to allow stuff to come through that you weren't targeting. It's like, oh great, now I have all these other products that I wasn't intending to have in this pile of data, or it can actually do something way worse and bring in you know, some clicks at some really inefficient costs. So I would say triple, quadruple check your excluded selections as you're going in and making some big picture changes.
Yeah, it's especially difficult because it's just a button click.
It's
and I'd say
simple.
it goes the other way too, that you might accidentally exclude something that you don't want to exclude. So hopefully this is something that kind of gets worked out over time. The one tip I do have for that is, if you do have bids in mind, I find it a little bit easier to use the new version of the editor, which does have shopping support, and it's a little easier to see what things actually have bids set, and because they'll have their own column in the editor, and you can just highlight those and change the bids in bulk without having to select all, deselect certain parts, and then change the bids that way. So I'm still trying to get used to the shopping campaigns in the editor, but it seems to be doing pretty well so far. It's a bit of a learning process. And from what I understand, there are more changes coming down the pipeline, so hopefully we'll see it things get even better.
The Google promise. Bring it on home, Google.
So one of the things that we mentioned, we've harped on this a few times, is the dimensions tab. And you know, one of the things you could do is, we talked about looking at specific campaigns, but you can also spread this dimensions tab out and look at multiple campaigns. You can pull data across multiple areas. One thing you can see is that certain modifiers to your search terms do better. Not that you can necessarily target those on the shopping campaigns, similar to like the search campaigns where you use words like best, but find out what is actually driving the valuable traffic. And it just makes for easier reporting, kind of like you just touched on, Carrie. You could very quickly export everything down by product type. So if someone asks, you know, how is our shoe line doing? You can say, well, our shoe line is doing like this at the high level. It's looking very good, but we need to actually spend more time on our clothing items because those are suffering a little bit. The one thing I would also add to optimizing performance is Google Shopping has 5 custom labels in it now on your product feed, and you can use those for a variety of options. And similar to using all those different categories that we've covered and that are available in shopping, you can use those to segment. So I know the big examples are for seasonal items, so you can quickly turn those on, turn those off. You can say just exclude all summer items once we hit September. I'm not sure what the exact cutoff date is, but sometime around then. I say results will vary. But you can use that, but you can also do it rather than going and saying, I want to segment by Nike basketball shoes and Nike cleats. You could also say, I want to actually break these down even further by my high margin versus low margin value. So you can set your bids accordingly. So even if a product is expensive, but you just don't stand to make much money off it, you just say, you know, it may make our numbers look good revenue-wise if we get a lot of those sales, but if we're paying too much, we just aren't actually making any money from it anymore. So we want to make sure we're conservative on those bids.
Yep, I think that's a great way to look at it, kind of like the priority items as far as like what your return will be on the other side. So, yep, that's definitely a good way to do it, is to customize as much as you can and to really make your priorities present through your feed.
Yep. And one last note on the thing, there are 5 labels, but those labels can stack on top of each other. So I think you can have up to 1,000 individual labels, and you can apply up to 5 labels to each individual item in the feed. So if you want to mark something as summer high margin green. I don't know why you would have a label just to highlight green items. I mean, I'm sure there's a thing out there for people who just love the color green and they only wear green.
I think there is now. I'm feeling it happen
there
right
is
now.
It's like, starting right here.
I kind of want green overalls. I mean, who doesn't want green overalls now?
So it's starting right here. So go out and buy your green items. Be on the forefront of this. That way you can look down your nose at the people who are wearing green in the future and be like, you know, I was there first with PPC Hero.
Awesome.
Okay, so wrapping it up, this is a very high level. So as with anything, your strategy is going to depend on the account size, your goals, and just the time that you have to invest in it. As with anything in your account, you need to figure out what's going to give you the most bang for your buck. So sometimes it's going to figure out what's the actual value and where are the issues. Is it just I don't have my campaign set up properly, or is it I actually need to spend some time just going back to the feed and reorganizing this and optimizing this before I make another push? And each one takes a different amount of time. You know, going through the structure that can, depending on what you're doing, it can be set up rather easily. Back before the editor update was available, just about everything had to be done through the interface, and I'm sure plenty of you have kind of suffered through that, and maybe for worse, it's kind of turned people off from doing the segmentation. It just said, this is just painful. I don't think I can do this anymore. So the large expanding accounts are going to want to focus on targeting many broad areas and then gradually defining that focus over time, weeding out the bad stuff, pushing the good stuff, as well as finding those most profitable areas in the product offers. You know, I'm really happy Carrie went into covering, you know, like inventory, because we're always going to say you have to optimize around your goals, but every business also has its own concerns, such as inventory. When is the product going to be in stock? How popular is it? And you want to make sure that, as with anything, this doesn't exist in a vacuum. And it's going to make you and whoever you're working with much happier if they can see how, you know, PPC is actually contributing to the business and marketing overall. For the smaller, tighter focused accounts, you're going to want to focus on immediately advertising in specific areas and heavily reducing the inefficiencies from the start. So I'm taking the approach that, of course, some smaller data feeds are going to be from very large advertisers that have a large presence. But we kind of took the viewpoint that some of these are smaller just because they're smaller businesses, and we've used apparel and shoes, and anyone who is kind of in that space knows that there are some very big competitors in there that make it very difficult to kind of have that very broad reach from the start and compete with them, because one, they bring in so much money, they seem to invest so much that even if they might not necessarily be making making enough money, they can kind of just bid you down into oblivion and make you suffer if you want to compete with them. So that's why you just want to focus on those specifics, because a lot of the time, you may have heard this on other webinars targeting search, it's going to come down to those details where those big advertisers who are spending a lot of money are suffering and they haven't really optimized around that. So you want to be able to beat them in that area.
So this is kind of our final question for you, but we want to know, would you like help with your PPC accounts and management? So you can let us know if you're interested in actual PPC management. So we would handle the day-to-day management of your PPC account. You could also just get an account audit, so we review your account for optimizations and present those to you. You get a PPC retainer, which is kind of like really just like the best of the best, kind of we're going to pop into your life for a minute and handle the specific needs within your account and then disappear into the night. Or you can get a free solutions blueprint where we actually look at your account, provide you some analysis and consultation if you've got an account that spends over 20K in ad spend. So feel free to select one of those if you'd like to. And typically at the end of our webinars, we try and address some of the questions that come through. So a couple of you have sent some questions, which is awesome. And for those of you who are still kind of processing all the information that Jake and I sort of threw at you just now, there's a lot to take in, and there's a lot of ways to address how you optimize your account. So if you've got additional questions, feel free to reach out to us either through #ThinkPPC, through Real Secret Jake, through my Twitter handle, or through us at Hanapin Marketing or PPC Hero. So one of the questions that somebody asked is about getting the product ratings beta. So in my experience, there are basically two ways of getting into a beta. You can either contact your own Google rep, or you can go through a whitelisting form. So for this one, I included the link for the whitelisting form. You should be able to fill it out and submit it that way. You could probably just call, if you don't have your own Google rep, call Google and just start to talk with somebody about making sure that you've submitted it properly. But that's something that they do have out there for folks to sign in on.
Yeah, sometimes it feels bad if you start recommending the betas, and then, because I've seen that on other blogs and stuff, and someone asked them like, oh, well, you need a dedicated to Google rep. I know for certain, yeah, this one definitely has a web form.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to actually go back through the slides, I'm sure there's been posts on it somewhere, or a simple Google search will probably turn it up. Mm-hmm. It's a simple web form. You just have to fill it out, submit it, and hopefully they get back to you pretty quickly. When I've had to do a web form before, they've gotten back to me relatively soon.
And as all betas go, I mean, it's something that theoretically it is here for a limited time frame, and it may disappear out of nowhere. So really, if this is something that you think would work well for you, I would strongly suggest looking into it, because for all we know, it'll be gone in a month or something, and you won't have a chance to try it out. So I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah, but I think there's a few others. There's another whitelisting form that might pop up that's not necessarily the ratings, but if you've seen it before, I cannot remember the name. It's so basic, but the offers with the little pop-up boxes on it.
Yeah, it's like a special offer.
There's like a special offer for the product listing feeds that you can include in that Google pushes as having the same click-through rate, but you can offer special little bonuses like coupon codes or a free shipping offer or something like that. So if you do the Google search and you don't go directly to the link, you might see that pop up as well. I know that also has a form, and I'm not sure what the status of that is. So I know the reviews are currently accepting applications and processing them. I'm not sure what the status is of the other one, but I know the form is still open.
And I know that when we had the webinar with Google a couple weeks ago, month ago, 6 months ago, I don't even remember. You guys, this is just a blur of webinar fun. But when we met with them, that was one of the things that they talked about too, was that kind of beta they've got out there. So you can always look through and see what the Google webinar through PPC Hero, what that included, because they definitely covered that as well. So we got another question, and this is one, Jake, that maybe you can chime in on. It has to do with the descriptions that you can put with your products in your data feed. So somebody actually mentioned the fact that they've expanded the number of characters that you can actually allow in your product description feed. And so earlier I was saying, to mess around with what you do with your actual description line and see what kind of testing you can do to improve your relevance. And the question here was, okay, so if I've got thousands of characters, why shouldn't I just keyword stuff it? Why shouldn't I just go crazy using any word I can think of that I think would be relevant? So I was wondering if you got an idea on why it might be beneficial to either actually go ahead and keyword stuff like crazy, or be more specific about how you address that.
Well, it's kind of interesting. That's one of the first times I've heard it presented like that. My first impulse would be that I'm sure there's blocks in place to stop that, but it's kind of interesting because I've heard it depends on the source, if it's a Google rep or someone who works there. Because the official line, it sounds like, is that the product feeds are going to be very similar to SEO, where it looks at your content. So I've actually seen the other side saying that you shouldn't have very long ones, because I know a lot of advertisers, their descriptions are going to be ripped straight from whatever the manufacturer submits.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what they have, and that you should actually go back and submit custom ones that are highly relevant. So I wouldn't be surprised if they aren't penalizing it, but I don't know if they would actively take it into consideration. I think there's only so far you can go, and I know Google is very big on the NLP, not the manipulation technique, but the natural language processing. Newer computer science version on doing that, in which they can, I would imagine, identify what is actual content and what kind of constructs a full sentence or phrase rather than keyword stuffing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not quite sure. That's an interesting question that I think I'm going to look into, because it feels kind of like SEO, like that black box, like those descriptions. It's trust the system, trust us, it works. But there's not really any details on what specifically you should do. And I've seen the same thing if you start looking on Google doing searches for blogs, that it's almost anytime there's ideas to optimize the feed, it's all kind of, well, you're going to have to try this. This should probably work, but you have to kind of see what happens. Unfortunately, it's not like the search side where you can tie it back to a specific keyword and add and say, that's what actually changed it. You have to change it on the back end and hope that the changes come through in the results.
Well, I think you should test it. I said I like test. I think you should do one description line that's like crazy long, that has all sorts of those keywords plugged into it, and another one that's just like a really simple, really nicely done description of it. And then we'll meet back here 1 year from today, and we will see how it performed overall.
And then I guess if anyone else is going to try this, I feel like we need to make a pact not to say anything about this, because if anyone listens in and they catch on to it, they'll then stop.
Awesome. Well, we have one more question. This is kind of an interesting open-ended one, and Jake, you're welcome to chime in on it, but it has to do with creating your data feed. So I made sort of a little comment earlier about how if you're already running a shopping campaign, then you're looking for optimizations, and you probably already have things like the tech side of it, the data feed, and everything all laid out. But we do have questions sometimes about what to do about your data feed, how to build it, who should build it, what it's going to take to make it effective for showing your PLAs. So I know that I've got some experience just with some client feed issues where it just took quite a while to make it happen. But Jake, I don't know if you've got anything that you want to chime in before I ramble on for who knows how long.
I almost feel like you should go, because I feel like in one of my situations, the most headache-inducing version we had, one of the clients actually went with a vendor to help out with that. So there's quite a few vendors that will actually help with that, because this is a very common issue, and it's hard to really solve because there are lots of content management systems that have export features or they don't. Even if they don't, and it's how do you actually get to having the feed, or it actually exports the feed, but it puts it, like the question said, in a weird format, and then what's actually wrong with it. You don't have time to go through every single cell and try and narrow it down. So going with a vendor could work. The other one is sometimes you might just have to really dig into the details about it, because sometimes they can be unclear, and try and specify what exactly is going wrong. I know we've been talking a lot about AdWords because they're moving to shopping, but on the Bing side, I know there's some quirks in the upload system there that some other account managers have had issues with, and found, just trying to look for anything that looks weird, so extra spaces, weird characters that were inserted. I'll let you talk about your direct experience.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I mean, I think that's something that a lot of folks struggle with, especially if they're doing this in-house. And I mean, I think that having a sort of data feed management platform is something that, depending on where all you're selling your products, that might be something that is a good investment for you. But really, I think that the two ways that we handle it here, if it's a small feed, I mean, sometimes it's just something that you manually build out and then sort of troubleshoot by just by product at a time. But I would say even on a larger scale, that's something that you could look into, is trying to do just not even your full set of data, but just like a smaller subset of data, and uploading it and seeing if it gets processed properly. Now, one of the weird things is that when you're uploading your data feed for the first time, it has to get, it goes through a much longer process to get approved. And then when you're updating that product and updating, the status or the quantity you have or whatever it is, it goes through, within a couple hours or something. But that initial upload is really what takes a minute. So trying to do an entire feed that may or may not work, I would say doing a much smaller sample size for your sample test feed is going to be a good way to try and have it pop out some of the things that you can fix, and get into there and say, okay, these are the ones that did work, these are the ones that didn't work, or is it the overall format's not working and it's bouncing back, and I need to just reassess how I'm creating these columns of data, how I'm kind of like what you said, how they're formatted and how they're being interpreted by Google, because there's certainly a way to fix it. It's just figuring out how to take it by more bite-sized chunks, really.
And after I finished my answer, I was going to say that's the exact thing that popped in my head. And when we were having this, those headaches with that specific client going on before we had the vendor, was very similar to what we were doing. So had a group of products that we knew we wanted to push, got that running, and in the long run, it's probably not something you want to do, but whenever you try something new, you can upload a new test feed and have that go through. That way it doesn't actually interrupt what's already working once you get something working. And then kind of circle back, and then over time gradually expand your real non-test feed and work like that.
Excellent. So the one thing that Jake and I were having fun with talking about earlier today is doing some optimizing and editing within the AdWords editor. So that's something that's been popping up more, and I know that for one client that I was looking at, I didn't see it as segmented as Jake had it in his AdWords editor, just because of the way that his campaign is broken down. So Jake, I don't know if you want to talk real quickly about what your experience has been as far as how easy you've been able to hop into the editor and poke around, and kind of what areas you focus on when using it.
Oh,
so I know you're doing like bids, like for your product groups and things like that. Is that your your major go-to point on that?
That's my major go-to point right now, because the one thing that is what scares me is when you actually look at it in the editor, rather than having something that's very basic, you see like /product group equals what is it, apostrophe, and it has some extra terms after it. And it's one of those, I'm still coming to grips with being completely comfortable, because I have thought, once I kind of learn that syntax, it'll be very easy to do this by hand and just kind of leave the interface behind. So right now I just use it to make small tweaks, to exclude things, to change bids, as well as the one nice thing is the way it is structured, those product groups are in a somewhat kind of logical manner. So you will see some of the same indentation. So when you are in the editor, you can see kind of what the parent group is, what the child group is.
Yeah. Yeah, and kind of like we said, I mean, depending on how you build out your feed and what you are selecting as your product group, it may or may not pop up as an option for you. So that's definitely an area that, as you're best segmenting things, kind of how we walk through the different strategies you would use for that. That's something that you'll probably have a little more availability to go in and tweak things depending on how you've broken things out.
Oh, and there was another question added on now that we were talking about the editor about which version it was. I am on a Mac. I don't know if they're versioning it different on the Mac and the PC right now, but I'm using version 10.5. That's the one I've been using. So if you haven't, or if you aren't seeing this option, I would go ahead and go to the AdWords editor site and then see if there is a new version uploaded. And I've talked with some other account managers. You might not find it right off the bat, but when you want to look at your product groups, you're going to want to go to the targeting tab. And once you have this new version, you'll see a new sub option in there for product groups. There's another one for products, which I wish I could tell you what exactly it did, because nothing populates even though all my product groups are working.
It's true.
And that is where you'll actually have to go and make your changes. You won't see it in other parts that you're used to looking at in the AdWords editor.
Well, great. Well, we've had a great time talking to you guys about all of this fun shopping stuff. And like we said, if you're interested, you're welcome to sign up for a free solutions blueprint from Hanapin Marketing. So if you spend over $20K a month, let us know if you'd like us to take a look at your account and come up with some good solutions for it. You can always contact us directly at marketing@hanapinmarketing.com. And you're welcome to do a little tweeting if you have any follow-up questions. Sounds like a lot of you guys are still kind of getting some of those initial steps into place as far as how to best use your shopping campaigns. So absolutely, feel free to reach out to us, reach out to the PPC community, and see how we can help you. And don't forget to go get your green stuff. Just know the green stuff is happening. I think
you heard it here first.
Green is so cool.
We got some green links in here, so that works out very nicely.
Well, thanks so much for attending. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you guys next time.